Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. In this video, we'll be addressing the Illuminati, the psychology of secret societies. An article taken from Horizon, Journal of the Philosophical Research Society, Spring 1947, Volume 6, Number 4, The Illuminati, the Intellectual Revolution in Europe. The psychology of secret societies. Confederations of men and women bound together by certain obligations into esoteric fraternities have existed since the beginning of human society. A practice so ancient and so universally venerated must have been more than passing significance. Today we are inclined to resent secrecy, especially in the field of learning. We feel that knowledge of spirituality and philosophical principles should be available to all. Esoteric groups reserving for their own use information which might advance the general security of the race, at first thought, appear to be practicing a policy of exclusivity, contrary to the best interest of the average citizen. Is there any justification for the long-established practice of withholding higher knowledge from the masses and conferring the privileges of wisdom only upon specially selected persons? The oldest of secret societies was the tribe itself, into which each child must be initiated with appropriate ceremonies. The ancients did not regard birth as bestowing equality. The individual must prove himself to be entitled to his share in the common opportunities and responsibilities. Citizenship must be earned. The boy or girl must be tried and tested, and must recognize and accept the duties of maturity. The tribal initiations were, for the most part, trials of courage to prove that the young person was worthy of a voice in the mature decisions of his people. With membership into the tribe was bestowed the lore of the tribe, its religions, arts, and sciences, and the statutes regulating conduct. In tribal life, each member could endanger the entire group if he failed to abide by the laws of his people. In the process of voting, the ballot of the foolish man could cancel the ballot of the wise man, thus weakening the collective judgment. The citizen was not permitted to exercise influence in the government until he could prove conclusively the honesty and the ability of his mind and motives. In Egypt, a child received two names. The first name, called his milk name, it was given at birth and was used until he reached the age of discrimination. At adolescence, the child's lock of hair was cut and he was initiated into the society and political life of the empire. Then he received the man name. This was given to him in the temple when he took his oath before the gods and dedicated his life to the service of the state. No one could become a ruler over the people until he had become initiated into the mysteries. The child was not baptized at birth because he lacked the power of choice and decision. He must be old enough to understand and decide in all matters, religious and political, before he could be held accountable for his action. As the human family grew up, natural divisions took place within the collective structure of the race. Specializations of interest and ability resulted in cases and classes. The members of each of these various groups could be recognized as possessing certain knowledge in common. Originally, this knowledge descended through families, but under certain conditions, outsiders might be accepted or adopted if they displayed extraordinary aptitudes. Practical considerations influenced this policy. Originally, education was largely a matter of association. The son of a physician grew up in an atmosphere of healing and medicine and might reasonably be expected to absorb a certain amount of information so readily available. A carpenter's son would not be so likely to attain a medical perspective. Therefore, it would require considerable additional time and effort to equip him for the profession of healing. Secret societies of antiquity were usually closely identified with the tribal or national religion. The basic knowledge of arts, sciences, and crafts were believed to have been bestowed by the gods in a remote age, and patron divinities presided over the several branches of learning. The practice of a profession or trade implied the acceptance and worship of its presiding deity. Prayers for the success of various undertakings were addressed to the deities and tutelaries associated with the respective enterprises. Obviously, many of the motives which inspired and perpetuated the esoteric fraternities of long ago are no longer valid. Modern man selects his vocation according to taste and ambition, and is trained as completely as possible, regardless of innate disability. At the graduation exercises of a college which was bestowed 100 medical diplomas, a dean whispered to me, 90 of these young men and women have passed their grades successfully. They have studied medicine for only one purpose, to go out and make money. God help their patients. The other 10 will be real doctors because they sincerely desire to serve the sick. This is the fundamental difference between the ancient and modern concepts of learning. The world has lost interest in the divine origin of its cultural and economic institutions, and no longer pays homage to orders of guardian spirits. As the fashions in human thinking changed, secret societies altered their natures and appearances. Foundations were shifted from the solid rock of things spiritual to shifting sands of things material. Political fraternities are leagues dedicated to reformation with or without revolution. They come into existence whenever and wherever government degenerates into tyranny or fails in the central strength necessary to arbitrate the disputes of factions. Minorities driven underground by persecution are united inevitably by the mystic tide of oppression. As long as injustice rules civilization, there will be a substratum of organized resistance. Ancient China has had very little contact with the cultural systems of other nations, and it offers an excellent field of research for those interested in social motion. The earliest notice of a Chinese secret society is found in the records of the later Han Dynasty. About 185 AD, an organization called the Red Cap Rebels, composed entirely of intellectuals, attempting a secret rebellion against the throne. The Red Eyebrow Society, so named because the members painted their eyebrows with vermilion, began about the same time with similar purposes. The Triad Society, or Heaven and Earth Association, which used many Buddhist and Taoist symbols, was formed much later in an effort to overthrow the Manchus and restore the Ming Dynasty. The Golden Orchid Society was an organization of young girls who had sworn never to marry. It was a secret revolt against the heartless Chinese marriage customs. More recently, the Boxers, originally given to magical rites and to the practice of hypnotism, developed an anti-foreign league. Political secret societies arose in Europe during that part of the medieval period known as the Dark Ages. The almost complete absence of a public program and the universal disregard for the life and rights of the private citizen led to the creation of several powerful fraternities, the members of which were brought together, like the Beggars of Paris, for the purpose of mutual protection. Some of these groups have survived to the present time, but for the most part, the reasons for which they were created have failed of significance. All secret societies are not by nature benevolent. If liberal and generous attitudes prevail in a social order, they become an affliction to those who desire to enslave their fellow man and profit at the expense of the public good. Unscrupulous factions organize their resources in private and attempt to overthrow the existing regime. Such groups are properly regarded as subversive, but they will exist as long as selfishness inspires activity. Secret orders to perpetuate radical and religious intolerance, rather prevalent in our times, can all be traced to economic motives. Secret groups naturally align themselves under two general headings. The first seeks to improve humanity by fostering a program of universal progress and improvement. The second group would limit opportunity to privileged political, economic, or religious classes in order that these classes might continue to dominate and exploit the collective interest. The struggle between these two classes is reflected in the conflict between progress and the status quo. The psychological power of secret orders originates in the aura of mystery which surrounds them. They assume vast proportions because their boundaries cannot easily be estimated. All men naturally fear the unknown, and when this fear is intensified by a bad conscience, the effort of a small group upon a large delinquency can be devastating. There are several occasions recorded in history where a handful of secret organized idealists operating quietly have succeeded in overthrowing a strongly entrenched but corrupt ruling class. One of the first acts of the Axis dictators prior to the Second World War was to outlaw all secret societies, except their own. In the areas which they dominated, the dictators were afraid of the power of secret assemblage, and even forbade more than 3 persons joining in conversation on the open street. The effort to break up groups and lodges resulted in the creation of an undercover movement which contributed a great deal to the ultimate discomfiture of the Nazi Fascist League. Secret organizations remain to this day a powerful weapon against exploiting groups and classes, especially where the privilege of the ballot is absent or corrupted. And for this reason, such fraternities are loudly condemned by all would-be dictators and their followers. Governments are ever alert to the activities of secret orders functioning within their boundaries. Where their orders are naturally benevolent, every effort is made to prevent them from being dominated by political groups within the countries themselves, or by foreign influence which might be intent upon undermining duly constituted authority. Many countries now require that the rituals of every fraternal organizations be available for inspection by authorized officials at all times. This requirement has brought curious and disquieting facts to light on a number of occasions. European secret societies are much more involved in religious or political intrigues than are the corresponding groups in England and America. This is due primarily to the carefully nurtured feuds which obsess the composite mind of Europe. Most all English and American organizations are fraternal and benevolent. There is a utopian quality present and a generous vision for human improvement. Reforms in education, the dissemination of useful knowledge, a general thoughtfulness about serious matters, and broad charities are the dominant issues. The esoteric philosophies have always been taught by the means of secret organizations to which candidates are admitted only after appropriate initiatory rites. These spiritual brotherhoods are called mystery schools. Such schools exist in all parts of the world and are the proper custodians of the esoteric lore which descended from the distant past. Here again, the modern tendency is to resent the existence of secrets so important as to require almost complete concealment. Fortunately for the human race, the initiates of the mystery schools are fully aware of their responsibilities and cannot be induced to expose the arcana of their orders. But it would be entirely false to accuse these initiates of selfishness or any other ulterior motive. They have no desire to reserve their knowledge to themselves. They have assumed the obligation of administering wisdom for the greatest good of all the peoples of the world. In some instances, this means that the information can be given freely, but in most cases, the human being must be protected against the misuse of these spiritual forces, which are beyond the understanding of the average person. The program of the mysteries is comparatively simple. Man must grow up to truth, for truth by its nature cannot be brought down to the level of a selfish and intolerant humankind. It is a mistake to assume that man would grow in virtue if he became more powerful. His education and motives must come first. The individual must accept knowledge as responsibility rather than an opportunity before he can be entrusted with the secrets of universal life. It has happened in the past that secrets belonging to the mystery schools have been revealed prematurely through the perfidy of some member who has assumed his own right to break the vows of his order. Perhaps his motives were well intended, but the results has always been unfortunate. For example, the breaking down of certain classical institutions has resulted in the emergence into the light of modern misconceptions of what we call the materialistic sciences. We should remember that biology, physics, chemistry, anthropology, astronomy, and medicine originally formed part of the esoteric sciences of the temples. In order to forward the temporal state of man, the mysteries as institutions were profaned, and the sciences per se were separated from their spiritual and philosophical foundations, which by their very natures could not be profaned. The result has been an increasing in temporal empire, an intensification of skill, a tremendous increase of competitive and destructive tendencies. The human being came into the possession of skill without the wisdom to administer skill. He becomes strong without virtue, and has used his strength to become rich without principle. We can scarcely prove that this program has been entirely beneficial. What might have happened had the sciences remained a part of the esoteric doctrine? Consider the modern university. It opens its doors magnanimously to all who have the necessary high school credits and the equally indispensable tuition fee. Through the broad portals of higher learning, the youth of our world flows in and out. Why do the young men and women of today go to college? Some seek social connections. Others desire to fit themselves for economic superiority. Still others are athletically inclined, and only a small percentage sincerely desire learning for its own sake. There are no special standards either demanded or expected other than a fair scholastic standing. We graduate millions of young men and women somewhat skilled, but still deficient in those basic character requirements which alone can bring them security. Suppose the modern universities were administered as were the mystery schools of antiquity. The young men and women who desired a higher education would be met at the door by a priest who would ask the simple but all-important question, why do you seek learning? If the applicant replied that he wanted to become rich or respectable or superior to his neighbors, or wished to improve his social condition or be made a gentleman by an act of the Board of Regents, or would like to show his diploma to his friends, the great door would close in his face. He would be advised to engage in some useful trade which would employ his hands, because it was evident that his mind was unemployable. If, however, in reply to the question, the applicant replied simply, honestly, and with all sincerity that he desired knowledge in order to become of service to his fellow men, the priest would open the door a little wider and permit him to enter the vestibule. Here his credentials would be examined. First, a letter from his father or guardian would be carefully considered. The letter would read something like this. I have brought up my son in the love of truth. I have taught him that there is but one just ambition, the desire to be of use to mankind. My son has always been honest, obedient, gentle, and kind. He has been taught the love of God and his fellow men, and he is resolved to devote his life to useful learning. It is my prayer that you receive him and educate him, that he may give all of himself to the works of God, the service of the state, and the good of humanity. A second letter would then be demanded, this from the magistrate of the town in which the young man lived. It would read thus: "This is a certificate that Philo, the son of Glaucus, is a free-born man of respectable family, that he has committed no offense against his community, but is recognized by all who know him as possessing upright character, high integrity, and good morals. From childhood he has been studious and suitable for learning. As magistrate, I testify that this young man is of sound mind, clean heart, and blameless character." Having contemplated these letters, the priest would ask for evidence of the applicant's scholastic attainments. This would be in the form of a certificate from the youth's previous teacher, and would read in substance, "I do swear upon the name of Zeus that my pupil Philo, the son of Glaucus, has received adequate foundation in the three indispensable sciences, mathematics, astronomy, and music. He has also been educated in the sublime theology which reveals the nature of God, the substance of the beauty, and the practice of the good. Furthermore, he has been taught all physical arts for the perfection of his body, and comes to you without serious defect, either mental or corporeal. I have examined and tested him in every way, and he has satisfied me that he will not abuse learning, nor permit the secrets of the temple to pass into the keeping of the unworthy. He understands responsibility, possesses discrimination, and can be entrusted with the substance of wisdom. His word he will keep, and his honor is above reproach." Thus recommended, the young man would be brought into the presence of a group of instructors for examination, not only as to his abilities, but especially as to his motives. If these masters were satisfied, he would be accepted and would remain a student in the temple over a period of from 5 to 10 years. At the end of his time of instruction, the graduate would take his final oath as follows: "I, Philo, the son of Glaucus, do swear by all the gods, my witness, that I will live only so long as I can live honorably, and I would choose death above dishonor. Neither promise of reward nor fear of pain can induce me to reveal the secrets of my school. I will never employ learning to further despotism, nor enslave my fellow men. I will never use knowledge to accumulate wealth, but will live simply, dedicating all that I know to the glory of the gods and to the good of mankind." We cannot but wonder what might have happened in this sad, tired world if scientists who invented the atom bomb had been bound by such an oath. This is the answer to those who insist that all knowledge belongs to all of the people. Knowledge belongs to those who use it wisely and well. If a man desires to gain more knowledge, he must be able to prove that wisdom can be entrusted to him, that he will protect it with his life and sacred honor, and possesses a strength of character above all personal concerns. Suppose doctors, lawyers, and those of the teaching profession, ministers, politicians, and leaders in every bracket of our complicated social system had such convictions in their hearts. Yet without such convictions, without such dedication, without such consecrations, can any human being be entrusted with the skill and power by which he can change the course of empire? Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies through PayPal or Patreon. Links are in the description. Thank you very much.